Welcome back, VA user. Now, in today's session, we'll learn how to set a default focus on a certain window. Now, we'll take an example of AR invoice and we'll see what's basically the default focus set presently and how we can change that default focus to some other fields. That is again very easier into the application dictionary, or using the application dictionary, we would be able to set up the default focus. So in today's video, we are going to learn that. So let's open our AR invoice window. So you would be able to see your AR invoice window, and the default focus is invoice to customer presently. And if I will say new record, it went to invoice to customer. Now I want that instead of invoice to customer, it comes to the account date as default focus. So in such a case, what we need to do, we just need to log into our system tenant using the system administrator role. Open your window, screen configuration, search the relevant window in that you want the changes. So it is the AR invoice. Move on to the tab, then move on to the relevant field of that particular tab. So here is the field, and thereafter I can filter it out. So if I want to filter the default focus where it is presently, so I will say default focus and I will set as true. So your default focus presently is invoice to customer. So you would be able to see the invoice to customer. I don't want to set this as default focus. Instead, I want my account date would be the default focus. So I would come here, I will search my account date, I will set this as default focus. And then save the record and move on to your tenant. Say cache is set. Open the window AR. And you can see your default focus is account date. If I will say new record, the default focus is account date instead of the customer. Now the question is, if there are two default focus, so we'll keep two default focus. One is invoice to customer and the other is account date. Then what happens? So I would come here and I will say invoice to customer. So that is the one. And I will say this is also the default focus. And we'll close and we'll see what happens now if there are more than two default focus. So I did my cache reset, move on to the AR invoice, and we'll say new record. Our default focus is still the account date. That depend upon to the sequence number. If this is the sequence number 1 and this is the sequence number 2. What I'm trying to say here is the account date sequence number is less than the sequence number of invoice to customer date, and that's why the default focus remains at the account state. If I will set the default focus to payment method, then by default invoice to customer and payment method, by default it would be invoice to customer and not to the payment method, since the sequence number of invoice to customer is less than the sequence number of the payment method. And you can see here the sequence number is 130 for this particular, and for the account state you would be able to see the sequence number is 100. And that is what happens when you will set up the default focus accordingly. So I don't want my default focus account date. So I will keep my settings the way it was, and we'll move on and we'll check it once again. And we'll say cache is set, and thereafter we'll say AR invoice. And you can see my default focus came back to invoice to customer. Okay. So that is how the default focus works into the Vienna Advantage, and you would be able to set it up. That's all in this particular video. If you think that the content is enough for understanding to set up the default focus into the VA system, then I would request you to like and subscribe our channel. Till then, thanks a lot. Bye-bye.